becomes a snare. So anyways, it says, and God said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. Okay, that wasn't a would you. No, he's making a statement. This is something that I am requiring that you do. So we're going to read that again. And God said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. Okay? So this is really something that we're going to figure out what in the world happened. This is my covenant, which ye shall keep between me, you, and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. Ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of covenant betwixt me and you. And it lets you know, everybody in his house has to be circumcised, and, even if strangers come into his house, they have to be circumcised as well. Nobody, any person that was uncircumcised would be cut off from among his people. So now I'm going to let me see. And I'm going to do one more scripture, and then I'm going to have to end because I've been up over 24 hours probably now, and it is a such thing as needing some rest sometimes. But I'm going to be back, and we're going to go into more things that are going to be necessary to know. Okay, this is 15. I'm going to go down to 13. And then after this, I'm going to end. And Abraham, and he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve, I will judge, and afterwards they shall come out. With great substance. That was Egypt. That happened. Well, we know that happened. If you know anything about the Lord, you know that happened. Oh, wow, I needed to. Let me see if I can bring that back up. If you know anything about the Lord, you know that happened. These were some illustrations that I wanted to share with you. Let me see if I can bring it up. We looked at the sheep. This tree here. I don't know how I missed that. Okay, this tree here is a tree, as I spoke in the introduction, that the Hebrews is a tree that is been sick. It's been a cursed tree that didn't even know it's been under a curse. It's a tree that needs to be healed. And the only way it can be healed is to be put back in its natural environment, because it's out of sync. And that land will not even have peace in it until God's people are back in it to be in harmony again. And so they're going to have problems in that land until God's people return. And God's people are going to have problems outside of that land until God's people return back. It's out of sync. God has for his people to be in that land, but he had to punish us, or punish out the Hebrew Israelites. And yes, I am an Israelite, and I'm going to explain to you how I know that. But for now, let me see if I can just put this down just a little bit, because I can't show the whole tree, but I want to. Okay. Okay, on this illustration, this is Abraham. He is the root He's the patriarch. Then he had Isaac, which is like the trunk area. Almost, he's a little higher up than the trunk, but that's like Isaac. Then Isaac had Jacob. Then they branched. Jacob had the 12. Actually, Jacob also had a daughter named Dinah. She would have made 13, but see, back in biblical times, women did not have the, I guess you could say, they weren't liberated at that time. Men were the ones who worked, and women stayed in the house, and they kept the home, and they raised the children. And so when he gave his inheritance to his sons. Here's Dan. I can't even hardly read. I think that's Zebulun. I can't even hardly see the Issachar up here. And who is this? Naphtali and Benjamin. Naphtali, Benjamin. Now this is Manasseh's. Joseph had 2 sons. So that's why they received their inheritance because of Joseph, where's Joseph at? Okay, there's Joseph there. There's Joseph, and these are his son, Ephraim here, and Manasseh's there. And these are just illustrations. And then you got Asher, and who is this, Gad, and Levi. Now the Levites, we need to locate the Levites. Simeon, Reuben. Okay, Dinah isn't on here because she was a female. It's just like Miriam or Mary, who was the birth mother of the Messiah. But yet, when they went back through the lineage, they went through the lineage of the stepfather, who was not a blood relation. In today's world, they would have searched back Mary's lineage, not Joseph. He was not the biological father. God was his biological father. He was the Immaculate Conception. He was considered a demigod, where he was part man and part God. Because his father is the Almighty Creator, God. And it came in the flesh, in the form of man. And so, but when they did the lineage, they did the lineage down through Joseph. And so, but I mean, Mary, they could have been, they were related because the Israelites only stayed within their tribe. They didn't marry outside of their tribe, so they might have been cousins or whatever. So they were still related, but the lineage should have really been through Mary. Which tribe was Mary from, or however. But that's just my thought on that. Okay, but anyways, getting back to it, as we talked about the root, which is Abraham, then Isaac being the trunk, and Jacob being just before the branches go out, is a tree. This is a tree that is scattered all over the nations. All of their seed is scattered all over the nations as we speak at this point. But God is going to take all these scattered people and bring them all back home, and that's a lot of people. But he's God. And when God says he's going to do something, it's done. Just as he spoke faith words, I have given, it's done. So there's no way in the world that you could possibly figure out how God's going to do it. Just think about Moses. Okay, let me go up here and talk, because I guess I'm going to run my mouth, huh? Okay, so let's talk about Moses. Moses was a Hebrew Israelite that Pharaoh sought to destroy because he was considered that he was branded as being the deliverer. Moses didn't even know he was a deliverer, and he didn't even want to be once he found out that he was. But to show you how God's infinite wisdom is beyond man's comprehension, he took the deliverer that Pharaoh was trying to destroy, because Pharaoh was throwing all the Hebrew baby males in the river, in the lake, to drown them. Heartless people. But anyways, And the one child that he was trying to destroy, he raised up in his own house. Which goes to show you that the Hebrews and the Egyptians looked alike. Because if Moses was of any other ethnic group of people, he would have stood out. He would have known that he was one of the Hebrews. The only one who knew that Abraham was Hebrew was Pharaoh's daughter. So when they pulled him out of the little Nile area and she had compassion, God would turn the hearts. God has control of the hearts. He can turn your heart to just melt. And she brought that baby in, and he fed right in with the Egyptians. He was learning in the wisdom of the Egyptians 40 years. Then he began to communicate with his brethren, soul searching, so to speak. And where it tells you in the movie Ten Commandments, it shows Moses being in prison and locked away, and what's her name, whatever her name is, Nefertiri, them being in such this romance. That's not scriptural. Moses saw what happened. Moses saw two Hebrews when he was born among his people. He saw two Hebrews in dispute with one another, and he tried to make amends. And but see, prior to that, he saw an Egyptian that was abusing, that was mistreating a Hebrew, and he defended that Hebrew, and he ended up killing that Egyptian, and his death back at that time to anyone who would even strike an Egyptian. So Moses hid the body beneath the sand. And so when two other Hebrews were conflicting with one another, and he was trying to, kind of intervene and help them to make amends with one another, one of them spoke out, well, what are you going to do, kill me like you killed the Egyptian? And he figured, well, if he knows this, I know it's going to be a matter of time before Pharaoh hears about it. So Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh. He just took off. So understand that when you are looking at a movie, you need to also read the word as well, because the movies are entertainment. Understand, they're entertainment. And I mean, the Ten Commandments was one of the greatest movies back in its day. It absolutely was. I mean, back at that time, to make those waters part and look so realistic as they did back then, that was awesome. It was awesome. I love biblical movies. Some about biblical movies that just put me so at ease and so make me so contentful. But I have to also, and one of the most scriptural movies that I'd ever viewed was Daniel, the story of Daniel. That is more scriptural than any movie. It stuck more to the scripture than any movie, but of course, that ethnic group of people were not God's people, and most characters in the Bible are not. But God is awesome, because in the midst of so much, He still put His truth there to feed His flock. Kind of like Moses being brought up back to Pharaoh. And not totally unbeknownst to him, and he loved Moses more than he did his own flesh and blood son. So, and that was just like when Joseph, became sold by his brothers. They were jealous and hateful, and you're going to have that civil rivaling and people hating you when you're walking in the Lord. And so they ended up selling him into Egypt, and God blessed everywhere Joseph went. He was blessed when he was in prison. And that's going to happen. The devil's going to set you up to go to prison. A lot of people go to prison and they were set up to go there. A lot of people go to prison because of maybe something they've done. But I've talked to several people that have sat in prison close to 10 years unjustly. So, and finally when they kept telling them that they didn't do it, they finally let them go. But how in the world could you hold somebody that long without evidence and stuff like this? So understand that the Hebrews being out of their element is like a fish out of water. They will never be treated justly here because it's not God's will for them to remain here. It's not God's will for them to stay here. But I'm going to show you in scripture that he makes it clear that when they go back to their own land, then they're going to be right back in their element. They're going to be right back in their element of nativity. They're going to be right back where they belong. And they're going to sink there because God is going to be there with them. I mean, just like when God left Egypt, I mean, when the Hebrews left Egypt, God left with them. You know, God can do things in such a mighty way, but it's so much I'm going to explain because the Hebrews brought that on themselves because God warned them, and I'm going to show you where they were warned, and everything that happened, God needed to bring this about because he cannot lie. He warned them, and it was their choice. Well, no, I'm not going to say that because as we get into scripture, we're going to find out what happened. It's going to be made very clear exactly what happened and why so much has come down so hard. And we cannot blame, or the Hebrew Israelites cannot blame other people. We got to blame ourselves. We are guilty. I mean, not per se maybe me or you, but our ancestors. Because if the laws were put before them and they did a couple of very vitally wrong things, and I'm going to show you that, and you're going to understand what happened. So anyways, I'm going to end here. I don't know where my remote is. I'm going to end here, but there's some more things I want to talk about Abraham with, but I've been up probably over 24 hours now, and I have some things I have to do tomorrow. But I'm going to post when I can, but we're going to talk a little more about Abraham. Abraham had married twice. He married another wife, and he also had kids, about 6 kids by her, and also with his concubines. And we're going to talk about more about the covenant, but I just wanted to get a few things out there with Abraham, but we're going to discuss more about him on my next video. So anyways, thanks for tuning in, and God bless.